There's a silent epidemic that has been happening for decades on our federal lands. Everyone loves recreating in national rec areas, national forests, and national parks. But there's an unseen danger about these places. You could become a missing person, and there would be little done to bring you back into the known. Today, we're going to explore the silent epidemic that's happening right in our own backyards. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. My name is Elise, and I'm your host. I hope that you guys are having a great week. And today is not the average Morbid Outdoors episode. We are going to be discussing the missing epidemic of our national parklands. When I say national parks, I'm meaning national rec areas, national forests, and BLM lands. And first, I think we should start off with a brief back history of why we have a national park service and a national park system. So, before the National Park Service existed, the United States already had national parks, but no single agency to manage them, which was a huge problem. It started with Yellowstone National Park, that was established in 1872 as the first park and of its kind in the world. I do have to say, I am from Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas, and Hot Springs was actually federally protected before Yellowstone. So I don't know which one was first. I would have to say it was Hot Springs, but it didn't get its national park status until much later. Now, this idea was revolutionary. We wanted to protect a natural landscape for everyone and not have any of it for private profit. So that is why the national park system was established. But it's kind of funny that, I don't know, it is the government, so I don't guess it's that funny, but they established the parks but didn't have anyone to manage them. And I think that is hilarious because that is poor planning at its finest. So, after Yellowstone was established, there were others that came: Yosemite, Sequoia, Mount Rainier, and more, and they were all managed in different and usually inconsistent ways. Some were managed under the US Army, others were managed under the Department of Interior, and some were barely managed at all. And without coordination, poaching, overgrazing, and vandalism became extremely real threats for our national parks. By the early 1900s, advocates like John Muir and Stephen Mather pushed for a unified agency to oversee all national parks and monuments. Mather argued that America's most beautiful and historic places needed both protection and professional management, not just for conservation, but for public enjoyment. So there were a lot of people realizing that they were not being managed correctly, and they wanted a more consistent management for all of them. And they made a ruckus about it, and their efforts paid off because Congress passed the Organic Act of 1916, which officially created the National Park Service within the Department of Interior. And the mission was clear: this is their mission to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, to provide for the enjoyment of the same by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. And since then, the National Park Service has grown from managing a handful of Western parks to protecting over 400 sites nationwide, including natural wonders, historic battlefields, and cultural landmarks. As I'm sure that you are aware of, millions of people recreate on our national park lands every year. Most people are in groups, on vacations, or taking road trips. And America has so much to offer in terms of outdoor recreation activities on public lands. And many of these people in the public lands have no idea about how many people who have gone missing in the same areas that they are recreating on. So, one thing whenever I travel with friends, they hate or maybe they love it about me, I always know who went missing where, and I usually bring it up. I'm like I was in Capitol Reef National Park earlier this year with a friend, and I'm like, "Did you know that Ted Bundy buried one of his victims here, and she's never been found to this day?" Now, obviously, Ted Bundy is an American serial killer, so not really like the same in the same realm that we are discussing today, but there are tons and tons of people who have gone missing on our national park lands, never to be seen again. And a lot of people don't know. I mean, they might have some awareness of the risk of being outdoors, but they don't know how bad the problem is. Multiple spokespeople for the National Park Service, they say that National Park Service investigators are continuously working to find people who get lost or have gone missing. But I don't really know if that's the case all the time. And right now, we are still currently in a government shutdown. And I'm not talking about currently like this today. I'm talking about historically since the National Park Service was formed and more recently in the last, 20, 30 years. According to Catherine O'Toole, reporting for News Nation, she actually says that the National Park Service does keep a list of the missing. Um, I don't know. There are, like, you can go to a National Park Service cold cases website, and 24 of those cases are listed on the cold case website. But this is not the exhaustive list. These are kind of more recent cases, and I don't really know how they pick and choose which cases they want to keep on the website because this website is not continually updated or, it's not like I don't know, it's just so weird. So if you've been to that website that I'm talking about, you know whose cases are on there. I could probably name half of them off the top of my head because there's only 24 listed and there are way, way more than that, who have gone missing in the national park systems who are not on the website. I found a quote from a survival expert named Jason Marsteiner, and he said that the risks are everywhere. It's not just in the national parks. He says it's just when people go missing in a national park, it makes headline news. I disagree, and I agree with that statement. I think that it just depends on the person and the situation, right? So, oftentimes when people do go missing in national parks, they usually do make the headlines, but not always. Most of the national park's missing cases are solo hikers, like Charles Lyon, whose car was found on the Grand Canyon South Rim in June 2021. Or James Pruitt, who was 70 years old and set out into the Rocky Mountain National Park as a snowstorm moved in for what was supposed to be a day trip. Now, a lot of these people that are visiting national parks, they go on day hikes, and a lot of these people probably have never in their entire lives spent a night outside. Now, there's a lot that you need to know before you spend a night outside, but if weather situations happen or an injury happens, these day hikers are woefully unprepared in what it means to survive for even a night before rescuers can get to you if there was an injury or a medical event. Now, of course, I'm not going to discourage solo hiking, but I do think there are extra precautions that you have to take to ensure your safety and just making sure that other people know where you are at. I do a ton of solo hiking. I do probably 90% of my hiking, I hike by myself. It is not dangerous in itself, but what is dangerous is not taking the right precautions before you go out. But it's not always day hikers that go missing in national parks. Some of the cases tracked by the National Park Service goes back decades and include those with plenty of outdoor experience. One ranger on the list of the missing has been gone for more than 4 decades. Another case involves a woman who vanished in 1976. Then there's Dennis Lloyd Martin, who was last seen in National Park in 1969. And he, of course, was a little boy, so he did not have a lot of outdoor experience. But these cases go back decades and decades and decades ago. They are all missing despite the best efforts of trained professionals trying to locate them. The U.S. National Park Service has 424 national park sites and 63 national parks, but somewhat controversially, it does not directly collect data on the number of visitors to its parks. The same applies to the Department of the Interior, which oversees the National Park Service and the Department of Agriculture's U.S. Forest Service. Now, the National Institute of Justice, which is the research arm of the Department of Justice, calls unidentified remains and missing persons the nation's silent mass disaster, estimating that on any given day there are between 80,000 and 90,000 people actively listed with law enforcement as missing. The majority of those, of course, disappear in populated areas such as cities and suburbs. I think a lot of us have the same question. How many people are missing in our wild places, the roughly 640 million acres of federal lands, including national parks, national forest, and BLM property? There are a ton of cases. Cases like Morgan Heimer, a 22-year-old rafting guide who was wearing a professional grade personal flotation device when he disappeared in 2015 in the Grand Canyon during a hike after setting up camp. Or like Ohioan Chris Fowler, who vanished from the PCT without a trace. There are dozens of missing person cases on public lands, and I'm sure that you are familiar with most of those cases. The Department of the Interior knows how many wolves and grizzly bears roam its wilds, but for some reason it can't keep track of visitors who disappear, which is highly suspect. But the government does not actively aggregate such statistics. The Department of Justice keeps a database, which is the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, but reporting missing persons is voluntary in all but 10 states, and law enforcement and coroner participation is voluntary as well. So a lot of the missing are also missing from the database because you don't have to enter someone and it's missing if you don't want to in most states. After the September 11th attacks, the Department of Interior tried to build its own database to track law enforcement actions across lands managed by the NPS, the BLM, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that resulted in basically nothing. The result was called the Incident Management Analysis and Reporting System, and it was a $50 million database to nowhere. Basically, only 14% of the several hundred reportable incidents were entered into it. The Fish and Wildlife has actually had the opportunity to utilize this program, and they said no thanks, and they refused to use it because that's how crappy it is. So just forget about numbers for a second. It matters where you disappear. That might not make sense right now, but let me explain. If you vanish in a city, the local police department is likely to look for you. The police can obtain assistance from a county sheriff, or maybe in severe cases, the state police or university law enforcement. And if foul play is suspected, your state's Bureau of Investigation can decide to get involved. And of course, on top of that is the FBI. So basically, they can all help you or help you find someone. But these organizations, they don't go rifling through the woods unless your case turns into a criminal one. So all bets are off if you disappear in the wild because national parks are massive. They operate almost as like sovereign states with their own search and rescue teams. And still, in most Western states, the responsibility for search and rescue falls to the county sheriff, which usually is less specialized than the national park search and rescue teams. So if you go missing somewhere out west, you might be screwed because it might just fall on the county sheriff's office. So here's my question. Who's keeping track of people who go missing on our public lands? Pretty much, it's you guys. This leaves the only estimates to civilians, armchair detectives, and conspiracy theorists to do this job. There are lots of people who believe that there are at least 1,600 people, and perhaps many times that number, who remain missing on public lands under circumstances that defy easy explanation. Journalist John Billman's research in his book, The Cold Vanish, estimates that an estimated, that's so funny, estimates 1,600 people are currently missing in the United States. However, he states that this is a number of rounded guesstimation and believes that this number is wildly conservative. Let's talk about Yosemite because that is a major hotspot for missing persons. At Yosemite National Park, there are more than 30 missing persons dating back to 1909 when F.P. Shepard got lost on his way to the Sentinel Dome offering views of the Yosemite Falls and Half Dome. Former park ranger Andrea Langford believes that in the time of social media, this will play a greater role in finding missing persons. And this is what she says. I anticipate the Park Service having a high profile case at some point. Because of social media, thousands of people can read about the case, get engaged, and help. And honestly, personally, I would say that that is already happening because a ton of people are able to turn in images or videos that they took on their vacations and help solve missing persons cases or even true crime cases like the case of Gabby Petito. But as we all know, Yosemite is not alone with its missing persons list. People young and old have gone missing from parks across the country. And these stories, their stories, are material for reality television programs like Rescue 911. And there was an episode of The X Files that covered the case of Joseph and William Whitehead, whose disappearance in Glacier National Park in Montana during the summer of 1924 brought in the FBI's involvement. I also want to quote David Paulides, who is very polarizing for outdoor aficionados. This is a quote from him. You can go into any police department in the United States, and within an hour, the police chief would lay down a list. But the National Park Service will not release anything comprehensive. And if you've seen any of his documentaries, you'll know that he asked someone for the list, and the person said, I can't, it's been a long time since I've seen them, but whoever he was talking to said, there's no such list. And if we did have it, it would cost you like millions of dollars, which is really weird to say. Okay, so I had to look it up because I want to be factual. When David Paulides used the Freedom of Information Act to try and obtain a list of unsolved cases, he was told that it would cost him $1.4 million dollars in fees. Even though he is the author of the book series Missing 411, the Park Service said he did not qualify for a news media fee exemption because his books are not in enough libraries. David went on to say, I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to keep the numbers hidden, but the National Park Service certainly doesn't advertise that there are dozens of still missing visitors in Grand Canyon or Yosemite, and a county sheriff isn't going to put a missing person on his reelection poster. And I do happen to agree with David in this situation. I don't know if there's a massive conspiracy theory, but the National Park Service generates a lot of money for our economy, and they want people to feel safe and like this is a great place to be. And so they're not going to always have all the missing persons flyers up. It just wouldn't make sense. I think too many people would ask questions, and also it might even be a safety risk for other people. Who knows? People might see these posters, try to do the trail, be unprepared, and find themselves in the exact same situation as the still missing person. We're just really not sure what would happen if all of that information was publicly available all over our national park systems. But I have good news. There might be a new list or like reporting agency soon. Because on September 20th, 2024, in Washington, D.C., The U.S. Senate has passed a bipartisan legislation introduced by Senators Alex Padilla and Tillis, John Cornyn, and Richard Blumenthal, and Chris Murphy that would require the Department of Justice to add a new category to the existing National Missing and Unidentified Persons Systems database, which is NamUs, which would allow the public and law enforcement to mark cases where a person went missing or was identified on federal land, including specific location details. This new feature allows family and friends of missing people on public lands to more easily enter the information in NamUs, while law enforcement agencies work to improve national records of missing individuals. The Tracking and Reporting Absent Community Members Everywhere, which is TRACE Act, also requires the Department of Justice to submit an annual report to Congress detailing the number of cases from the previous year involving individuals who went missing or were suspected of going missing on public lands. According to a NamUs report, over 600,000 people go missing in the United States annually. While the majority of those cases are resolved, tens of thousands of people remain missing every year. So, Senator Alex Padilla, who kind of introduced this bill, he was like the main one on it. This is actually awesome because this is going to be, it's an act and it's going to help record missing persons on federal lands like national parks, national recreation areas, national forest, and BLM lands. So the Trace Act was passed by the Senate. It now has to be passed by the House. Then it goes to the president, and then that is when it will become a law. I am really hoping that this becomes a law because I think it is so important, not just for like people who go missing on public lands, but it's more important for everyone because any one of us could have a family member or a child who goes missing on public lands that we might need to report extra information for. So I think it's great. I'm attaching the information in the show notes about the Trace Act for the 119th Congress. It's got, it's on the government website, whatever it's called. And you can actually read this. So I actually think it's a great bill, act, whatever, to be introduced. Again, it is called the Tracking and Reporting Absent Community Members Everywhere Act. And so they use the acronym TRACE. And so I think this is great. I think this is long, long overdue. So major props to the senators who are sponsoring this and getting this passed, hopefully into a law. Now, this act is endorsed by the American Rescue Project, the Association of State Criminal Investigative Agencies, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Conservation Colorado, National District Attorneys Association, National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Major City Sheriffs Association, Outdoor Industry Association, Public Land Solutions, Raven, and Trust for the Public Land. So I'm hoping in the future we might see more about that, and that is going to be huge for everyone. And while we're talking about this, let's talk about the number of search and rescue incidents by U.S. National Park. Do you have a guess as to which federally managed national park area has the highest? I've talked about it before, just think for a second. And if you're guessing the Grand Canyon, you are wrong. The one with the highest SAR incidence is Lake Mead National Recreation Area, and it has 563. So the Grand Canyon comes in at second with almost half, 290. Yosemite National Park, 233, Rocky Mountain National Park, 165, Sequoia and Kings Canyon, 138, Zion National Park, 114, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, 100, Bryce Canyon National Park, 86, Grand Teton National Park, 59, Glacier National Park, 58, Mount Rainier National Park, 54, Cape Cod National Seashore, 53, Yellowstone National Park, 53, Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, 51, Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, 50, and Carlsbad Caverns National Park, 47. This is just a gentle reminder that when you are recreating on public lands, your safety is your own responsibility. I've seen so many TikToks and reels about people breaking the law right now because of the government shutdown. They're just camping in national parks wherever they want, destroying whatever they want. We've had vandalism and arches, and it is terrible. And so I just want to say if you're still traveling national parks right now, which I think is totally fine, if you're still respecting the land, respecting the laws, and respecting the outdoors, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. I visited Saguaro National Park during the shutdown, and it wasn't as fun as it would have been if it were like all the way open. But still, I'm so glad that I saw everybody being respectful and following the rules. So, I want to know your theories about why so many people go missing in national parks. I have my own theories. I'm gonna be funny here and say, like, when my mom and I talk about this, we just say aliens, like that Discovery Channel guy. But we're mostly joking for the most part. There are tons of theories, and as you know, I'm a huge fan of Occam's razor. But do you think it's the right theory in all of these cases? I just don't know if we will ever fully know. So I want to hear what your theories are. You can comment them, whatever, DM me, message me. And yeah, I want to chat. I love talking about this. I could be like that meme from It's Always Sunny with the guy with the red strings and the board. Like that's me when I talk about this stuff. I really, really enjoy it. As always, recreate responsibly and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Okay, so now I can talk about a little personal. I can ramble. Maybe people won't yell at me if I ramble at the end. So, I have not read for myself The Cold Vanish yet. It has been on my list. I thought I was going to be able to get to it this year, but I just don't know if I am. It is on Spotify as an audiobook, so I'm hoping it's a long listen though. It's like a long listen. So I'm hoping I can listen to it on a future road trip, but, I've heard from so many people that this is such a great read. Some of the information I talked about today was from it, some of it was from other articles, and I want you to read it too. I know many of you have already read it, but I have not read it yet, so don't judge me. I cannot wait to read it, it's on my list. And I'm thinking maybe what if we like do a book club? I don't know, that might be fun, like book club on Patreon or even on the general feed, like an extra episode. I don't know like what that looks like, but I have a podcast I listen to and they do book club and I really enjoy it. So let me know if you'd be interested to do book club for the Cold Vanish because I think it's going to be a great read even if you've read it, let's talk. Like, let's chat about it. I love to interact with you guys. And yeah, I think that's it. So I hope you have a great week. Have a great weekend. I know a holiday is coming up that a lot of people celebrate. So if you're traveling, be safe. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. You can also join us on Patreon for early and ad free content. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.